Guys, welcome to the U.S. Digital Dollar Project. In today's episode, we're going to go over how the U.S. is advancing their digital dollar project in 2021. If you have been with us for the last year, we've covered this in March of 2020. Let's check out this video.
Bitcoin is often championed as an alternative financial system independent from central bank or government control. But as Bitcoin's price and popularity rise, so too does innovation in central bank digital currencies. Joining me now to discuss is Jim Kuna, Senior Vice President of Secure Payments and FinTech at the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. Welcome, Jim.
Great. Thanks for having me. Happy afternoon.
Happy afternoon. Well, Jim, we know that the Boston Fed is working on a digital dollar in partnership with MIT, so I'm curious to understand if you think a digital dollar will exist side by side Bitcoin, or will government measures eventually restrict the use of Bitcoin once a digital dollar emerges?
Well, in the U.S., currently, the Fed does not have the authority to limit any private digital currency. So right now, that's not even within the scope of our powers. Now, Congress could also take different steps, but I don't see any reason why there can't be a coexistence of a central bank digital currency in many of the forms of payment, traditional payment rails in the U.S., but also cryptocurrencies. It really just depends on the individual currencies and how they operate. But I see no reason that a lack of coexistence shouldn't exist.
In late
both a retail space, but also in like a stable coin or more of a wholesale space as well.
Right. In late August, CoinDesk reported that the Boston Fed is exploring more than 30 different blockchain networks for the digital dollar project. Could you tell us details of what underlying architecture is gaining favor, whether that be a Fed-controlled centralized ledger or multi-party distributed ledger model?
Yeah, so the main thing we're doing is really technology research with MIT's Digital Currency Initiative. So it's technology focused. Right now we're building a prototype just to see whether a platform can handle the unique needs of the United States. That particular effort is technology agnostic. We're not necessarily looking or excluding blockchain and distributed ledger type systems. In addition to that, we're also looking at not deploying 30 more, but looking at 30 more platforms. They could be distributed ledger open source. They could be private sector initiatives. But we're trying to understand what's the possible suite of technologies that could possibly support a CBDC, just say over the next 2 years or so. Our research is going to take us.
What do you
see? Distribution models.
Sure, yeah.
We're trying to build a system with MIT that can be deployed in many different ways. Those policy decisions are very complicated and they haven't been made yet. So we want a system that could either be distributed through banks, through other financial mechanisms or other players, or even directly to consumers. We're not saying they would be sent directly to consumers, but we want to make sure the platform that we're building for prototyping can meet all those needs.
All right. And what do you see as the advantages of a more open system rather than a centralized ledger, or vice versa? How would you resolve scaling challenges?
Well, that's one of the major things we're looking at within the first phase of work. We're building a platform that can meet the unique needs of the United States at its very core. So, for instance, throughput. We haven't set the exact number, but we're presuming that the number is going to be tens of thousands of transactions per second. So by definition, that excludes some existing open source platforms, but not all of them. And then once you add more programmability, more complexity to the system, you have to make sure it can still scale. So it can still reach multiples of tens of thousands of transactions per second once you add certain things in there, for instance, like know your customer or anti-money laundering, if those are features that are eventually makes the platform. So we are agnostic. We are building 2 platforms with MIT, but also looking at 30 or 40 more. And we'll take some of those 30 or 40 more and bring them into our labs and test. So we're not deploying 30, but we're looking at well over 30 different ways of trying to.
Are you favoring a more centralized ledger?
Yes, most of them are centralized in that, for instance, they'd be controlled by the Federal Reserve, but distributed in that there's probably multiple copies of them, spread out, one for performance perspectives, one for resiliency, for defense against cyber attacks. So traditional systems can still be distributed in that you can have data spread over multiple centers, processing spread over multiple centers. Our assumption is this is in the cloud, so very flexible as far as how this is actually distributed. But by distributed, I don't mean distributed ledger necessarily or blockchain, but a technology that allows for performance and throughput to be enhanced by this distributed nature.
Right, and
but our assumption is it would be controlled by the Federal Reserve as a centralized body versus decentralized as what Bitcoin is.
And run in very top secret locations, I imagine.
The digital dollar is a CBDC, better known as a central bank digital currency. It is using a blockchain-based token to represent the digital form of fiat, in this case the US dollar. A CBDC is centralized. It is issued and regulated by the competent monetary authority of the country. In your top right, I'm going to have a link to all the blockchain technologies, the 4 types, to better understand what type of blockchain they're going to be using. A central bank digital currency would use digital tokens and blockchain technology to represent a country's official currency. Unlike decentralized cryptocurrency projects like Bitcoin, a CBDC will be centralized and regulated by a country's monetary authority, in this case, the US Fed or the Federal Reserve. While several governments are looking into the viability of creating and issuing CBDCs, no country has officially launched such a money. Forbes is reporting that the Federal Reserve Chair Powell says digital dollar is a high priority project. Many Americans don't even know that the digital dollar is coming. Key facts: digital central currencies are forms of money issued by the country's central banks that exist entirely electronically, without any connection to physical bank notes or coins. Jerome Powell, on Wednesday, February 24th. This is going to be an important year, Powell said, of the digital dollar project. This is the Federal Reserve Chairman, Jerome Powell, right here. Congress doesn't even know what's going on. Nearly every time an elected official has asked the Federal Reserve Chairman, Jerome Powell, about the digital dollar, he's emphasized caution and risk to the stability of the U.S. financial system. Wednesday, the 24th of February, however, Powell went further while speaking before the House Committee on Financial Services, saying the U.S. Central Bank would engage with the public on the digital dollar this year, 2021, giving a timeline on the central bank's digital dollar currency development for the first time. This is going to be an important year, Powell said, of the digital dollar project. This is going to be the year that we engage with the public pretty actively, including some public events that we are working on, which I'm not going to announce today. Guys, if you found this content helpful, like. If you want to engage more, subscribe. And I guess I'll see you all in the next one.